Alright, what you're seeing in front of me right now is a SVT-40. This is a Soviet self-loading rifle. It was developed during World War II at around the year 1938, because this thing was originally called the SVT-38, but it had a lot of problems to it, so they had to revise this until 1940. It was re-released and to the Soviet army, now known as the SVT-40. I just like to call it the SVT-40 because it's better. There wasn't any real changes from, well, I mean physical changes from the 38 to the 40. Maybe a couple here and there, probably the inside mechanism, I'm not too sure. As you can see, this self-loading rifle, which is really long, holds a box magazine. Here's the charging handle. As you can see, it's actuated by a spring system. Now the SVT-40 does not have a spring like that. I think it was a spring that was located in here, around this, right behind the bolt, not up here, because up here in this section is the gas, is where the gas piston is, because the SVT-40 is operated by a short stroke gas piston system, which means that when the bullet comes flying out, the gas gets collected up here, pushes the piston, and that piston pushes a rod that bumps into this charging handle, and then it just pulls back till it ejects around, and then the spring tension inside this section will push it back forward, chambering a new round. Now I did say this thing has a box magazine. Quite simple, really. It's only 10 studs long. It's a 2x10 stud long magazine with a tab at the front. It's just to hold the magazine to prevent it from sliding like all the way into the gun. So the magazines of the SVT-40 would contain 10 rounds of 7.62 by 54R. That is the same rifle round that is used on the Mosin Nagant rifles. So just put this here, put the magazine in there. If I can put it in there, it's really hard. There it is. Charge this. It should be loaded. The safety, well, I don't have a safety, I don't have a trigger, but the safety should be right here, hold on. How the safety works is that if you have a trigger right there, there would be a safety block or safety switch that you flip down, blocks the trigger to prevent it from being squeezed. It's just a pretty weird safety. It doesn't lock the bolt, it just stops the trigger from being pulled. But I did not get that thing on my mod. You can check it out on the internet what the safety and other features of the SVT-40. I didn't have it here because I was a little too lazy building triggers. Over at the front, you have this this section here, this the metallic section of the front end of the gun. And if you look at the SVT-40, you'll notice that there would be holes throughout this region, because this I just used plates on these side stud bricks, so I can just build sideways. Makes it really nice and thin, gives it the look of uh, stamp sheet metal, I guess. Of the front end, you have this forward ring sight, a bayonet lug. There's supposed to be a cleaning rod out under here as well. I didn't know how I was supposed to do that. And the muzzle brake. See the hole there. Overall, I kind of like this rifle. I mean, it was my favorite rifle during Call of Duty World at War. When you're playing the Soviets. It's not a bad rifle. It's a decent rifle. Oh, and a lot more history is that this rifle, SVT-40, was supposed to be the main battle rifle of the Red Army during World War II. Like, this was supposed to be like the M1 Garand of the Soviet Union. However, that did not come into fruition because once I believe it was Operation Barbarossa or whatever, when the Germans invaded Russia, a lot of the factories that made these were bombed out, and these rifles that were in millions were just captured by the Germans. So the Russians, like, instead of having to make another batch of millions of these rifles, which would cost way more than Mosin Nagants, they just had to settle for, well, the Mosin Nagant. And I think these things were later like reissued to a small number of troops. Well, they were in use, but in small numbers throughout World War II. And then by 1945, I believe you had this rifle called the SKS-45, which replaced the SVT-40. So that is all. I mean, a pretty decent looking rifle. It's quite long. Again, this is the longest at the time, or at right now, for me, the longest self-loading rifle I've ever built. Full size. This is, again, 48 inches for those who don't know. It is the same length of a Mosin Nagant 9130. So yeah, they are pretty long. Now, well, that's all. I hope you enjoy this build. Now, maybe next time I'm gonna go for something like a Caveira 43 to go alongside this SVT-40. Alright, and I'll see you guys in another brick gun video.